So I go and I search George Zinn. But look here, July 20th. Now, this July 20 is going to become very important tonight. The week around July 20th is going to become exceedingly important. And the amount of coincidences that take place between like a week before and a week after July 20 and all that time in between becomes very difficult to set aside, to disregard. That's George Hodgson Zinn. And he was searched, or this term was searched, according to Google, with an IP address originating in the District of Columbia on July 21, 2025. And again, I tell you, keep the anchor date around July 20 in your mind tonight. But you'll see this spike of interest in Timpanogos Regional Hospital out of D.C., and then no interest for 2 solid months before the shooting. But again, keep in mind that July 20 anchor date. Here we have a July 16, 2025. And then we have a July 3, and we have a June 28. So you had that July 20 anchor date, the time around there. You had a time way back. That could be anything. And so I wondered who the medical examiner was there in Utah. And I looked her up. She's a woman named Deidre Amaro. And she was looked up, but this time not in the District of Columbia, but in Israel, which I thought was very strange. June 30th of 2025. In Israel. June 30th, 2025, an IP address originating in Israel. Again, we talked last week about the ways IP addresses can end up somewhere. But again, District of Columbia, Bo Mason. Now, you can say, hey, he's a law enforcement official. Notice how close that is to July 20th again. We got it right in that same window where I told you really watch that time period. Really watch that time period right around July 20th tonight. Something caused a lot of these searches to take place right in a very narrow band of time. Has anyone in the world taken an interest in the old special agent in charge there in Salt Lake City? Yes, July 9th. Remember, about 10 or 11 days before that July 20 date I tell you to keep anchoring on. On July 9th, somebody looks up the old special agent in charge, Mahtab Syed. Could anyone have looked up any of these people? The first surgeon I could find was a guy named Stephen Nealman. Stephen Nealman. Remember that date, July 20. This is July 18th. This is July 18th. Stephen Nealman. July 18th, 2025. This was out of our friends on the other side of the planet over there. Very curious about the surgeons in Utah, you'll find out. I go to the next one I could find, Robert Patterson. I found a lot, so I added an MD to it. Robert Patterson, MD. July 23 and 24. This may have been the only one that was searched twice, 2 days in a row. July 23 and 24, Robert Patterson, MD. Again, I just find online a list of surgeons at Timpanogos. I eliminate people like the breast reconstruction surgeons because I didn't think that was necessary to look up. I looked them all up. I go to the next one, Lee Trotter. Has anyone looked up Lee Trotter? Again, notice the date. Notice the date. This is right in that July 20 area, that July 20 timeline. Someone with an IP address originating in Israel, looking up Surgeon Lee Trotter, near about that same July 20 time period. Are there other surgeons in the area? Yeah, as a matter of fact, there is. There's a guy named Lee Patterson. So I look up Lee Patterson. Notice the date, July 19th. Somebody with an IP address originating in Israel in the week of July 20, that week on either side of July 20, was very interested in all the people who practice surgery at Timpanogos Regional Hospital in Orem, Utah. Because there's more. By the way, there's a guy named Brian Gill, probably a very talented surgeon. July 22, IP address originating in Israel. What about Richard Rasmussen? I'm sure he's a fine surgeon, a nice guy, probably a pillar of the community. Also searched July 14th, IP address originating in Israel. I do know this. I had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 surgeons at Timpanogos Regional Hospital, and they were all searched by an IP address originating in Israel within about a 2-week period, a couple of months before Charlie Kirk was assassinated. So I found out what kind of mic he was wearing, a Rode Wireless Go 2, and I did the search for it. And wouldn't you know, 8 days after all the surgeons were searched, a Rode Wireless Go 2 was searched, again with an IP address originating in Israel. That same fateful 2-week window, July 14 to July 30, right in that 2-week window, when all this seems to be, if you could draw any conclusions, all this kind of seems to be planned during that period of time.
Now, I don't know if you've used Google Trends before, but if you haven't, then I'm going to take you through it right now, because this is fundamental to understanding what we're doing. Herein lies a problem with Google Trends data. Google doesn't give us data about what is actually being searched, because that data literally prints dollars for them. So why would they share that? But what they do give us is the ability to see a time series of how interest in a particular term changes over time by giving us some normalized data. It's using sampling techniques to build a representative picture of search activity. This means that while the sample is likely very well built, I mean, it's Google after all, there's likely to be some natural variation. We don't know, for example, if the 31st of March was unusually high or unusually low search volumes within the sample compared to the real world on that particular day. And if we do have some discrepancy, that could introduce an error into our data set.
Okay, so maybe this is just statistical noise. Maybe there's nothing to it.